Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. Together we dive into the world of sci-fi and science fiction. From episodes of Star Trek, Star Wars, to The Walking Dead, Resident Evil, all the hot new science fiction movies from the backdoors of Marvel or DC. The Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. You'll never look at science fiction the same way again.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Science Fiction Podcast. I'm your host, Shay Northrup, and today we're going to be talking about some of the movies that are going to be coming out in 2017 that we've been looking forward to. We kind of previewed a few in the past. We're going to dive a little bit further in depth into that. We're also going to be talking about the January lineup, which you should be looking forward to, which you should be missing out on. And we're going to be talking about a few things in news relating science fiction in and of itself. First things first. There have been a few deaths in the science fiction world, and I guess we got to talk about them. So first things first, I don't know if you guys are a fan of the movie The Exorcist, and I think horror kind of relates to science fiction in a lot of ways as far as the supernatural, spirituality, and then you get things like slasher movies and that sort of thing where the villains actually are kind of more science fiction than anything else because they keep walking after they've been, hit and attacked. But the writer of The Exorcist, William Peter Blatty, he has passed away, and he is best known for writing the novel The Exorcist, and he helped with the script for the 1973 classic film. He's also done a lot inside the industry and of himself. He's written countless screenplays and countless novels, kind of within that same Catholicism scope. And he passed away this last Thursday, so the 12th. And I have to say, it's kind of sad. I'm actually not personally a big fan of The Exorcist itself. I'm not a fan of Exorcist movies particularly. It's a subgenre of horror that I'm not really that into, but I can definitely respect The Exorcist for what it is, and the writing, and just the whole overarching story of the main character and of himself. So it was really sad to see this legend go, and luckily, he will not be forgotten. Another person who's died recently, and I'm sure you all have heard, Carrie Fisher has passed away. The hospital confirmed that it was a heart attack, and she passed away on the 23rd. So Princess Leia, my first crush and the first crush of many boys across the world, I suppose, is no longer with us, unfortunately. So that's a little bit of a downer. So sorry to let you all down, but these are things we got to talk about. Right now, I'm going to be talking to you guys a little bit about some of the things that are coming up this January, so please stick around. You're not going to want to miss out on it.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Science Fiction Podcast. And as you're all aware, ladies and gentlemen, I am recording this on Friday the 13th. And ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately has come to that time of the year where we are in January. Cold weather is starting to flood a little bit here in California, and I am not a huge fan of this month, mostly because of what it does to movies. Now, I'm going to read to you guys some of the lineup that's coming out this month that you may want to check out, but I'm going to be honest with you guys. A lot of really bad movies seem to come out inside January. I don't know what it is. I think it's just because of the lull of the year. If you want to check out some good stuff in January, usually you have to get the leftovers from December. I know because I was born in January, and instead of having parties because nobody wanted to come hang out with me when I was a kid, my parents would take me to the movies. And a lot of times, like I just found over the years that there was nothing ever worth watching unless if it was something that came the month before. Which is what I usually ended up doing. I usually went and saw those movies from the month before. And you also get kind of some, what's the word? You get some kind of Oscar-y type movies that come out around this time too, but nothing blockbustery. You know, the biggest months for movies, if you're not aware, are June, July. August starts to die a little bit. October is big for horror, of course, and May a little bit too. Things start kind of picking up around April, but like the first 3 months, January, February, and March, don't seem to do so well for movies. March, of course, better than January and February. So I'm going to talk about some movies that are going to be coming out this month that you might want to take a look at, maybe not. So Underworld. I don't know if they're going to make this the final one. Hopefully they do. We talked about it in a previous episode, Blood Wars. They're kind of starting to get a little bit silly, in my personal opinion, but we'll see how this one does. That's what's out right now. Resident Evil, I believe, is out this January as well, the 27th. It's coming out, the final chapter. Isn't that what they always say? The final chapter is something that I kind of get tired of seeing in movies, especially of the horror genre, and I feel like Resident Evil kind of fits in there a little bit. It's a little bit more sci-fi than I suppose horror, and it's not really scary. But so Friday the 13th had a final chapter, and that was nowhere even near the middle of the Friday the 13th franchise. Same with the Nightmare series. Although the Nightmare series has been rebooted a couple times, it still didn't quite finish off Nightmare on Elm Street. And I feel like there's this trend in horror movies where we're like, oh, the 5th or 4th one is the final chapter, and then they release 3 or 4 more movies. And Resident Evil seems to be one that I think is kind of unwanted, you know? I feel like nobody wants to go see this. That's why it's coming out in January, right? And I feel like it's just one of those things where the director just keeps pumping out these movies so that his wife can be in it. Because I don't know if you know this, but Paul Anderson's wife is Mia Jovovich. So he kind of keeps pumping out these movies, and I would like to see her do some other things. I actually think that she's actually a decent actress. On IMDb, however, which I am not super fond of their rating system, as I've stated in the past, it does have a 7.1 out of 10, so it might be something to check out. I'm going to give it a try, and I will probably talk to you guys about that in the near future. Now, another thing that's coming out this upcoming January is XXX Return of Xander Cage. I don't know if you guys like the XXX movies. I actually kind of liked the first one. The second one with Ice Cube I think was terrible. I'm not a huge fan of anything Ice Cube's in, to be perfectly honest. I don't think he's a good actor. But I don't know, Vin Diesel is back. And this could be a good thing and it could be a bad thing. I mean, Vin Diesel really hasn't been doing a terrible lot of late, but it seems like he's trying to get back into things, especially with the Fast and the Furious series. So this could be good. I actually really enjoyed the first one. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I would like to see. I would like to see it continue. I think this could be something to look into. Another movie that we have to look forward to is Split. Now, I've said in the past that I think this movie looks silly. I honestly do. I watched the trailer. It does not look like my cup of tea. It looks like it's my cup of tea, but it's M. Night Shyamalan. And M. Night Shyamalan has a real big history of, the first couple movies he did were really good, and then the last ones have gotten increasingly worse. Just worse and worse. I almost feel like at times he's trying to outdo how bad the last one was. Now, Split is really critically acclaimed right now. There was some test screenings and stuff that were done, even like as far back as November. Some other people have already seen it. I don't know. It's got a 78% on Rotten Tomatoes right now, and IMDb seems to be blowing up about it too. Now, that movie is coming out on the 20th, and, everybody seems to say that they liked it. Even one of my favorite movie reviewers himself, he seems to hate everything, has a real stick up his butt about M. Night Shyamalan. Like the guy, hates M. Night Shyamalan. But he actually enjoyed Split. YMS, Your Movie Sucks. Good channel if you want to check them out. Pretty good. Little shout out. But, see, this is the kind of thing that happened with The Visit. I don't know if you guys are familiar with The Visit, and I'm praying to the maker that you guys are not, because The Visit might have been M. Night Shyamalan's worst film. I was so underwhelmed by it. I hated the kid characters. I hated them. They were flat out annoying and despicable. I did not care for them. I did not care for the grandma and grandpa, and the little twist at the end really bothered me. The only thing about The Visit that I did enjoy is there's a part in the movie where the girl's talking about laying ironic music over a scene. So she's talking about, because the little girl is apparently Steven Spielberg, because she seems to know everything about filmmaking, even though she's only 12. Like, she knows words like mise en scène, and she's getting red quality footage out of Canon Rebel cameras. We're talking red quality footage out of a 5D, and she's 12. But anyway, she's talking about laying music that's kind of ironic and not quite fitting the scene underneath, a scene that's a little different. So, for example, if you've ever watched, the Boondock Saints, right, where, Willem Dafoe is like, there was a firefight, and then there's the opera music playing under the background of the shootout. That would be a situation where that was going. And so they did the same thing, at the end of the movie, where they played the same song that the girl was toying with as they're running away to the police, and after this horrifying moment. And I actually kind of appreciated that. Oh, that was kind of neat. I'm glad you did that. I'm glad you showed that. It wasn't something super smart, but, I kind of enjoyed it. Good for you, M. Night Shyamalan. You still know a little bit, at least. Split seems to be having some pretty good reviews. I'm going to give it a try. Like I said, it looks silly to me. It looks like the kind of thing that I would go to, watch it with a bunch of friends, and just laugh the whole time. But who knows? It could be good. I'm willing to give it a chance, and I think you should too. Now, when we're coming back, I'm going to talk about a couple movies coming out this year that I am super excited for. So you're not going to want to miss out on that one. And then later on in the show, I'm going to talk about 10 cult classics that wouldn't completely be ruined by remakes.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Science Fiction Podcast. Now, we are going bananas down here because we have just watched the new trailer for Kong's Skull Island. And I have to say, I am quite excited. I love the story of King Kong anyway. I really enjoyed the original movie. I enjoyed the 1970s movie. And gosh, I don't know. Do you guys agree with me on this one or not? But I really enjoyed Peter Jackson's take on the movie. I know it was like 3.5 hours long, but man, was it worth it. I really had a good time with Peter Jackson's King Kong, and I was not expecting to like it because when I watched that movie at the time, I was not really familiar with who Peter Jackson was. I knew about the Lord of the Rings, and, you know, Lord of the Rings were great, but I didn't realize that that was who was directing Kong. And when it came out in 2004, I was like, oh, really? Did we need a remake of this? The original is really good. I know it's a little dated, but there are so many other, you know, giant monster things that either could use a reboot or just, you know, let's start from scratch. It's one of the things I love about Pacific Rim. I know it came later, but starting from scratch with giant monsters and robots and giving that feel, we don't need to be rebooting these things all the time. But King Kong from 2004 really did it for me. I don't know what it was. Even like Jack Black was a believable, serious character that I love to hate. I think he did a great job with the movie. Super, super long, but it didn't feel long to me. And I've actually gone back and watched it more recently. And one of the things is that CGI... Oh boy, CGI. CGI is a bit of a beast. It can either be done really, really well or really, really horrible. And a lot of times when we get a CGI movie and then there's a lot of CGI in it, it doesn't age well. You know, one of the reasons Jurassic Park worked so well was because they hid the CGI really well. You know, behind rain, behind fog. They just showed you little parts. And they also used practicals alongside the CGI. That's why Jurassic Park has been able to hold up for so long. Surprisingly, I think Kong has held up really well, too, even though most of the movie is CGI. Now, some of the dinosaur stuff looks a little silly, I'm not going to lie. But, like, King Kong himself and the fights that King Kong gets in are actually really good. Now, this new King Kong movie, unfortunately, maybe fortunately, has nothing to do with the 2004 one. Like, when I first heard about it, I was kind of excited because I was thinking, oh, hey, maybe Peter Jackson's taking another crack at it. Maybe we're going to get a sequel to it. Because when I watched Kong, I was like, I honestly, and I don't really like sequels coming out too often, and I hate that every movie has to be a trilogy nowadays. But I actually would not have minded a Peter Jackson sequel to Kong. I think that it was pretty good. I really enjoyed the movie, but this is actually kicking off from the Godzilla reboot. So if you're not familiar with that, in 2014 Godzilla came out, and it was the American version, and Gareth Edwards, who had only really ever directed like one other film, it was Monsters, which if you have not checked out Monsters, you should really take a look at it. The crew was super small, and he did all of the special effects and editing and everything himself. It's quite an achievement. It's actually a really well-made and put-together movie, especially considering the budget. Now, he was pulled onto it, and I honestly think he did a pretty good job. The more and more I look at the newer Godzilla, the more and more I see little faults and little errors, and, you know, but I actually just kind of enjoyed it more because it's Godzilla. And I think the fights were really cool. I think that, you know, they did a good job bringing it back in a sense, because if you've seen any of the older Godzilla movies, some of them are really hard to sit through. I had a roommate in college who was the biggest Godzilla fan on the planet, and we made a list of every single Godzilla movie, and we watched them all. The only one I haven't seen is like Terror of Mechagodzilla 2 or something like that. It was one of the ones that's a little bit more obscure from the 90s. Now, definitely better than Godzilla 1998. So this is kind of going off of the whole... It's by Legendary and Warner Brother Pictures, and Skull Island is in the same franchise. So what they're going to be doing is this is going to be kicking off a massive Godzilla vs. King Kong movie. And I think it could be a hit. Like, I think this could be really cool. I actually want to see Godzilla vs. King Kong. If you've seen the original Godzilla vs. King Kong, ooh boy, talk about a dated movie. But it's actually kind of a little bit entertaining. So Kong Skull Island is the trailer makes it look pretty good. Now, again, I think they're relying a little bit too heavily on CGI, but it looks like it's going to be fun. Now, I feel like they're kind of rebooting the whole King Kong thing, but at least it's taking place in modern times, so maybe there'll be a little bit more of a twist on it. Or maybe this might be, hopefully, this will be something where, this is years later, or maybe it's a different Kong, or, whatever. What got me right away with this trailer is right in the beginning. It's the international trailer that I'm watching. You've got the narrator, which the Japanese reading the lines and everything, and then like the guys are flying in a helicopter, and the guy's like, "Is that a monkey?" And it was kind of funny. Like I'm expecting some humor out of this. Now, one of the things that's interesting to note about this is Jordan. I'm going to butcher his name. Vogt Roberts is the director. Now, he's only done a few little things. He's only done Single Dads and Kings of Summer. And I find this very interesting. So we had Gareth Edwards, who did Godzilla. And Gareth Edwards had only done one film before, Monsters. And a couple little, little shorts. This guy has only ever done 2 other films. What are you doing here, Legendary? Are we actually getting like some fresh new directors in Hollywood? I'm kind of excited. I think that Gareth Edwards did a pretty good job with the newest Godzilla. So I am actually kind of looking forward to seeing what this Jordan gentleman's going to be bringing to the table. It's going to be nice to see kind of a fresh take. And I like that it's hitting the monster movie franchise. I like that monster movies are actually finally being looked at again. Like, we're finally getting some here in the States. What with Pacific Rim and Godzilla and all of that. And hopefully, this gentleman learns from some of the mistakes in Godzilla and we get an excellent movie. Another film that's looking pretty interesting is coming out this year, known as the mysterious untitled science fiction film. So it's called like A12, I think. So there's a little bit of a teaser trailer, and these are the guys who did The Witch, American Honey, 20th Century Woman, The Lobster, Moonlight, The Green Room. Basically, all of the best disturbing independent films that have come out in the last 3 or 4 years. And A24 is the name of the company. So they have this mysterious science fiction movie that's coming out, and it looks like it's going to be kind of, there's a lot of like question. Like these little words that they're throwing out, like question, what is, who are they, what's going on? And it's looking pretty interesting. Now, the one thing that I'm worried about for this, and I'm not going to talk too much on this because it's just a teaser trailer, and hopefully we'll be getting some more news, like real news on this in a bit. I'm just really hoping that it's not going to be one of these, oh, it's the gifted girl that's genetically engineered, and we have to save her, or we have to do something with her, or she's going to end up saving us. I'm getting really tired of that, guys. Just saying. I'm getting really tired of this trope of the super ultimate powerful smarty pants little girl or little boy who's going to save us all. Anyway, we are going to be coming up on a break. When we get back, I'm going to be talking about a little bit about some of the movies that are going to be coming out. And so just a quick list of some other things that are going to be coming out this year that we will probably be talking about. Star Wars 8 comes out this year. Looking forward to it. Glad JJ is not directing it. Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Wonder Woman. Spooderman. Homecoming. Looking forward to that, by the way. One of the things that I'm really happy about with this new Spider-Man is they skipped the Uncle Ben thing. Like, thank you. How many times do I have to see Uncle Ben die? I've seen it a million times. I've seen it in all the reboot comic books. I've seen it in all the movies. They even did it in the 1970s Spider-Man movie. I am really tired of watching Uncle Ben die. It's actually funny enough. My friend Zach Manning, we were talking about this, and I told him, like, I just don't want to see Uncle Ben die again. Like, I'm really tired of the rebirth of Spider-Man. Like, how many times do we have to watch Spider-Man's origin story? He gets bit by a spider, his uncle's dead. That is the whole reason he's Spider-Man, because his uncle's like, great, with great power comes great responsibility. I don't need to see that. So what he says is actually that line is the reason Spider-Man even exists, because Spider-Man is a very whiny little kid, and he is. Like, if you read the comic books, he's just always just like, oh, I love Mary Jane, but she might not love me. And he's very much like, man, I wish I didn't have these powers. So when he's not being sarcastic, he's being whiny. But I guess he's a teenager, so what can you expect? I'm a little whiny. Now, one of the things that he said is, because that is such a powerful line, and it is, it's a really powerful, it's the reason Spider-Man exists. He's like, they should just use a cut-in from one of the other Spider-Man movies. Like, take the one from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man and just use that scene with Uncle Ben, because Sony still owns the rights. I don't know. That might be a good idea. Maybe not. And then Blade Runner 2049 is coming out this year. Very excited for that as well. So those are just a few things that I'm kind of looking forward to this year. We will definitely be talking about them, and, I hope you guys are looking forward to them too. Up next, we are going to be talking a little bit about our boy JJ, and Abrams, that is. And we're going to be talking about 10 cult classics that wouldn't really be ruined by a reboot.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Science Fiction Podcast. Now, we are going to get started with a little bit of JJ. Now, our boy JJ, Mr. Abrams, has said that he's going to be saying goodbye to remakes. Wait, what? Goodbye to remakes? JJ, you're Mr. Remake. This is very surprising to me. What next? Will Amy Schumer be funny? Is Firefly going to be coming back to network television? And is My Name is Earl finally going to be getting that last season that we all desired? So, I guess J.J. Abrams is not doing remakes anymore. This is I don't know what to say about this, because J.J. Abrams' whole career is based off of remakes or sequels. Now, one of his first films, the one that put him on the map, was Mission Impossible 3. I actually hate that movie. And the one that really he did one, I think it was Super 8, that got him a little bit of popularity, and that was original. I actually kind of liked that. But then he did Star Trek, and he did, the newest Star Wars. And really what he's most popular for, actually, is taking something that's old, doing the exact same freaking thing with it, not changing hardly anything, and just making it look all nice and new and shiny and polished. That's kind of what he did with the new Star Wars. That's kind of what he did with Star Trek. So, I mean, I honestly think that, it's kind of a good thing that he's not doing reboots and sequels anymore. I kind of want to see what JJ can do on his own, and I think he's become respected enough in Hollywood where he can go and do these things. And maybe Star Trek was kind of a cash ticket for him. But I'm glad, because maybe he won't be ruining any more of my favorite sci-fi things. I liked the new Star Wars, but the more and more I thought about it, the less and less I liked it. And that's the 7th one. We're going to be talking about Rogue One next week. Don't even worry. And I will be definitely talking about some of the flaws in 7. 7, I don't hate it. I like it. I'd rather just go watch A New Hope again, though. In all honesty. And then the thing with Star Trek, and actually he said himself in a 2013 interview that he actually didn't really care for Star Trek. And I quote, "It always felt a little too philosophical for me." Okay. Well, I guess like he also said that he fell in love with the series after he was, told he had to make the reboot, and, he actually like looked into it. But, I hated what he did with Star Trek. Like, I liked the first one a little bit. It was fun. But the second one was awful. I was really mad about the second one. And if you're going to argue with me, tell me, what do you even remember happening in the second one? I don't remember. I've watched that movie 3 or 4 times. I can't tell you a single thing besides Benedict Cumberbatch pretending to be Khan. And I love Benedict Cumberbatch. He's a great actor. Sherlock is an amazing show. I actually really liked him as the dragon in The Hobbit. But like in that movie Into Darkness, and this is where I stopped. Not only did I not like the time travel of the first one, but Into Darkness, you have Khan, who is one of the most powerful villains of the Star Trek series. Like, nobody brought so much force and presence to the screen like the original Khan did. Even in the show, like the one episode he's in the show, he's such a good villain. And the movie, oh my gosh, you love to hate him, and you even feel bad for him. But in the newer one, the Star Trek Into Darkness, he just shows up as Benedict Cumberbatch, and he's like, "I'm Khan." And I'm like, no, you're not. Get off the screen. So if that means J.J. Abrams isn't going to be kind of tainting some of the things that I love, this might be a good thing. And he really hasn't tainted anything. Like, he brought Star Trek back, made it cool again. That's awesome. I'm glad there's a new audience for Star Trek. He brought back Star Wars in a way where it doesn't suck. We're not getting the prequels. And I bless you, dude. Like, thank you. I respect him as a director. I respect him as a person. And, dude, show us what you got. I would love to see some original content from you. Moving on a little bit, we're going to be talking a little bit about some cult classics that wouldn't be completely ruined by a reboot. Now, this comes from Blaster.com. They provided a little list here for us, and I'm going to kind of give my opinion on whether or not I think that these would be good good ideas. So one of the things that they say, like at number 10, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, which came out in 1978. I really don't think that would be a good reboot. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes kind of stands on its own. It's a really weird film, and it's hard to get into. And I know that, we've been getting a lot of remakes lately, and I just don't think that tomatoes rolling down the street would be something, that I don't think it would do so well today. Like in the 70s, sure, that's funny, whatever, but I don't think that it would do so well in today's market. Another one that they talk about wanting to re-release is The Last Starfighter from 1984. And if you haven't seen The Last Starfighter, basically imagine a Star Wars movie, but instead of any of the lightsabers and the blaster fights and everything, it's just a movie about like the vehicle combat. Like, it's just about TIE fighters and X-Wings. And to be surprisingly enough, The Last Starfighter was actually a pretty good movie. The ships looked a little redonk, but I think it would actually be kind of cool to see something like that. Like, video games have made the whole Starfighter genre pretty popular. Spaceship battles and everything are always fun to watch. So I think that would actually do very well. Another one that they're talking about, number 8, is Heavy Metal from 1981. I love adult animation. I did a little bit of a podcast about it in the past about how much I love adult animation and how I think that adult animation is where it's at. And I'm really sad that adult animation really isn't a thing anymore, at least not in the States. It's all anime, and that's fine. I like some anime, but I would love to see more stuff like Heavy Metal. Heavy Metal was an anthology based on the magazine Heavy Metal, which was always showing, scantily clad women riding around on like metal creatures waving around swords, or cybernetic warriors and that sort of thing. Very nerdy stuff, but done in a kind of metal way. And the anthology itself, like the overarching plot, wasn't particularly great, but like the art and everything was really fun. So I think we could do with another one of those. Heavy Metal 2000 was one that they released in the early 2000s, and it fell a little bit flat in comparison to the original Heavy Metal. Another one, they're talking about how they wish that they would reboot Mystery Men 1999. I think that movie stands well enough on its own. I think that they did a good job making fun of a superhero kind of world in a time where superhero movies were not as big. They weren't huge blockbusters like they were today. And I don't think that this would be a good reboot. Now, it's actually kind of funny because this was a really star-studded film, and it was a cult classic. But when it came out, it flopped hard. So I think I'd just kind of leave it alone. I think it was pretty good. I don't think we need another one. I'm kind of tired of superhero parodies. I've seen enough of Kick-Ass and Super, and I enjoyed them, but I don't need another one. Another one they're talking about is Tales from the Hood 1995. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm all about anthology horror, but I don't know if we would necessarily, a reboot would be so good. Let's just get some more anthology horrors like VHS or ABCs of Death. Another one they're talking about is Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I do agree. Great movie. But it does sound really well on its own. Dark City is another one that they're talking about. Dark City, again, I think it's a movie that, unless they turned it into a series, like an HBO series or something on Showtime, I don't really see this being remade. The movie stands really well on its own. It came out in 1998, but like, you could have fooled me. I would have thought this would have come out like in the mid 2000s, to be perfectly honest. Like, it holds up really, really well. The only problem with it being the time it came out, it kind of flopped a little bit and kind of like disappeared. Another one that they're talking about wanting to make a reboot for is Barbarella. If you're not familiar with Barbarella, it's interesting. It is a very interesting movie. It's definitely a 70s, 68, but it definitely is like a psychedelic trip. And a big reason that, people really enjoyed the film, to be perfectly honest, is to watch... It's really just to watch Jane Fonda run around scantily clad. Not a great movie. I know, Robert Rodriguez at one point was talking about remaking it. I think that would have been interesting. But he was going to do it with the lady who was in Planet Terror, and I guess they had a thing going, and that's like scandal. That's why him and his wife kind of divorced, from what I understand. I don't know. I don't really think that would be such a great remake. I've always been talking about, however, that They Live would be excellent if remade by the right director. I actually really like They Live. And it has this weird 15-minute fight sequence that was kind of... I could argue that it's okay, but, I'm not going to get into that. But They Live is an excellent movie with Roddy Piper, and it really talks a lot about like perception and everyday life and the media and that sort of thing. John Carpenter, who is one of my favorite directors, is the director of that film. If done correctly, They Live could be an excellent remake, but on its own, it does stand very well. If you want to see like a really good existential film, that's a good one to check out. And then, of course, there's also The Running Man. Honestly... Actually, The Running Man's pretty good. I was going to say Total Recall is better, which it is, but we already got a remake of Total Recall, and I wasn't super satisfied. I think The Running Man could use a reboot, but it would have to be, it would have to be done really well. They'd need a really good set designer. So that's the list of movies that Sci-Fi Wire has and Blaster.com has given us. What do you guys think? Do you think what scientific movies do you think need a reboot? Honestly, in my personal opinion, the old film Logan's Run had a great plot. It was a great movie. And it doesn't hold up so well today because of, budgetary restrictions and that sort of thing. So I would like to see a reboot of that film. Anyway, this has been the Golden State Media Concepts Science Fiction Podcast. Next week, we're going to be bringing you the Star Wars episode. I have been waiting for this for a long time. I have been keeping a lot of my Star Wars rants and talks somewhat out of these podcasts, just so that way when Rogue One came out, I could really give it to you guys. And so I'm kind of putting together this thing. That's why I didn't do it this week. And when we get back next week, I'm going to be giving it to you guys straight about the Star Wars movies and what is wrong with the prequels. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about what I thought was wrong with 7, even though I do think that it is a fine film. It is not horrible. And we're going to talk about Rogue One. So this has been the Golden State Media Concepts Science Fiction Podcast. You can find us on Stitcher, SoundCloud, iTunes, and GSMCpodcast.com. Thank you for listening, and stay saucy.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.